everyone, and welcome to my monthly update for Patreon. I know I said last month that I wanted to be posting these at the beginning of the month, but since last month's didn't go up until February 20th, I didn't have a lot to report at the beginning of March. So I'm a little late again this month. I will link the previous videos I've done in this format down below, but this is basically where I just take you through my list for the month and also take you around my sewing room and show you how everything is going. So this information might be kind of repetitive to stuff you see in other videos, but you guys get to be the first to see it. So as always, I have a pretty massive list and I'm just gonna go ahead and get through it. Between the last video and now, I have finished up the sunflower dress remake and gotten that shipped off. I think it turned out really nicely. Maybe not as nicely as the first one, but still pretty nicely, and the construction is much improved. I really took my time this time around and I think it shows. I also made the 1930s green jellyfish dress. I don't have any worn photos of it, unfortunately, but I did finish it and it fits and it's really, really cute. I also finished the 1960s bonus project, which is made out of the squirrel fabric that you guys voted on. The video about that project will be Patreon exclusive and going up next week. The video is mostly done being edited, I just have a few more clips to add. I also finished the 1960s Sewing Through the Decades video, and I had a lot of problems with that project. I was originally making it out of a pink tweed fabric that I hated, and the longer I worked on it, the more I disliked it, so I decided to restart. And unfortunately, I restarted after doing the majority of the editing and the majority of the construction for the first attempt. So that really set me back, but I'm a lot happier with how it turned out, and I'm glad that I decided to restart. And I think those are the only things I've actually finished in the past month, but I have made pretty substantial progress on a whole bunch of different things, which I will take you through my sewing room and show in a little bit more detail. But I've managed to finally make some progress on the Vivian Deer project, which has been in progress for so long. I had originally drafted the jacket for that and it did not fit at all. So the other day I got it redrafted, I got pad stitching and the collar done, I got everything cut out, and I did a fitting with it yesterday, and I am so pleased with how that is coming along. So I still have a good amount of work to do on that, but it is definitely a lot closer to completion than it was a month ago or even a couple days ago. I've also been working on the 1890s Eton jacket, which I think I mentioned back in October. It's made out of a really cool orange silk wool tweed suiting, and then it has velvet details and all of this velvet work on the back. So the jacket for that is obviously drafted and mostly assembled. I did have some problems with the collar, which I will show you in a minute. And I haven't started on the sleeves yet, and I haven't started on the skirt yet, but I'm happy with how this is coming so far. The jacket of that project is definitely the most complicated part, so once I have that done, I think the skirt is going to be relatively easy, and I'm really excited to get started on that. I've also worked quite a lot on the 1840s riding jacket, which you will see in just a minute. It is back there hiding. The jacket is completely done at this point. The chemise set that goes underneath it is completely finished, and all that's left to do is adding a few hooks and bars to the underskirt as well as getting that hemmed. Unfortunately, I've not been as productive with the Elizabethan project as I wanted. In fact, I haven't even touched that project, and I also haven't made any progress on the 1820 Spencer and skirt. They just weren't projects that I gravitated towards. I got really caught up in the tailoring aspect of the 1840s project and wanted to apply those techniques and help improve them on some other projects. That's why I dove into the Eton jacket as well as the Vivian Deer project. So it wasn't a super productive month, but I'm still pretty pleased with what I accomplished. And as always, I have lots of ideas for the next 3 days and 30 days. As far as Patreon exclusive stuff goes, I have a couple of polls coming up. The most recent poll was about the Patreon voted project, and the winner for that project was historically accurate Disney princesses. So I let you guys vote on which princess you wanted me to make a historical version of, and Anastasia ended up winning. I know she's not part of Disney yet, but I believe she's going to be added to the lineup because she is now owned by Disney. So I decided I would add her to the poll, and a lot of you guys loved that idea because she ended up being the clear winner. So I'm going to have a Patreon exclusive video where I do historically accurate versions of her most popular movie costumes, and then I'm going to let you guys pick which ones you want me to make. It'll probably be done in a similar style to my 1830s sketching video. So keep an eye out for that. The video will be available to $6 and up patrons, as all of my exclusive content is, but the poll is only going to be available for $10 and up patrons. I'm also going to be doing a poll for the 1970s bonus project. So the pattern I'm going to be following is from Butterick, and there's a dress option and there's also a tunic and a pants option. So I'm going to let you guys pick which one you want me to make, and I'm going to raid my stash and try and find materials that would be appropriate for that. As for the 1970s Sewing Through the Decades project, I do have the mock-up cut out, so that is on my list for today to film the mock-up vlog for that and to see how it fits, so I can go ahead and prep the material for the actual dress and get started on that. The dress is going to be made out of rayon, and if you recall my previous experiences with rayon, They didn't go very well. So I think this time around I'm going to steam and starch all of the fabric before I get everything cut out. So hopefully it will be a little bit better behaved during the actual construction. As for rewards, they're going to be a little bit late this month. I actually have all of the envelopes addressed for my $15 and up patrons. I have all of the rewards for my $36 patrons done. I just don't have the print. The largest quantity of any print that I have is 50, and I currently have like 65 patrons at the tier that qualifies for it. I'm not sure when that happens, but I don't have enough prints to send out the same print to everyone this month. So I've ordered more prints from Moo, and they will be going out towards the end of this month. That was definitely my fault for not counting, but they will go out just as soon as the prints arrive. So now that I'm finally progressing on some of the ideas that I originally planned on making back in October, I feel like I can toy with the idea of taking some new projects on. So I usually go into the garment district for my birthday, which is in April, and I think the focus of that trip is going to be the 1860s, and I plan on making some foundations before my birthday that would be appropriate for 1860s projects. So we're talking an elliptical hoop skirt, a historically accurate chemise, and maybe a corset. I have an 1860s corset that I really love the shape of, but it's definitely a bit worse for wear. And if I do end up doing that, then I would try and film it, because that was another heavily requested video when I was doing the Patreon Picks a Project. A lot of you guys wanted to see a foundation special, and I would love to be able to provide that. So the 1860s has always been a period that I absolutely love. It's not one that I've visited very often because the garments from it take up so much space, especially these skirts. But I don't want to let that stop me. I think I'd just rather deal with having a giant elliptical hoop skirt in my bedroom throughout the duration of these projects. And what is motivating that is that someone actually sent me a whole bunch of vintage magazines from the 1860s, and they have these beautiful full color fashion plates and so many pictures of bonnets and corsets and various things that were fashionable at the time. And they are so unique and so interesting, and I really want to make something inspired by those. So I think before my birthday I'm going to flip through all of those magazines and try and settle on a couple designs that really inspire me and get materials for those pieces. The other nice thing about the 1860s is that the fabrics that were used in the 1860s were pretty much fashionable for 100 years before that and a solid 50 years after that. And since those dresses require so much material, I'm pretty much guaranteed to have enough to use those fabrics for something from a different era too. So even if I don't end up making all of those dresses, I think that's a good source of inspiration to have and purchase materials in mind for. So I'm really excited about that, even though I don't have any of the designs nailed down just yet. I'm also starting to toy with the idea of making another bustle dress. I purchased some shoes from American Duchess because they were having a big sale, and they actually match some fabrics in my stash. So I don't know if it's going to end up being a really lightweight slim cut cotton dress because I have a couple striped cotton that would be appropriate, or if it's going to be a striped taffeta monstrosity, or what the deal is, but that's definitely something that I'm considering a little bit more seriously. I'm also still really keen on the 1830s archery project, which I mentioned in a previous video, but I'm going to try and hold my motivation for that back because I think that would be more appropriate to make in summer. And I'm also kind of wanting it to make something Regency inspired, but again, I feel like those dresses are really lightweight and a lot more appropriate for warmer weather, so I'm trying to focus more on coats and things that I won't be able to get away with making when it is 90 degrees out. So those ideas are on hold, but they're definitely something that I'm considering. And then the last two ideas, which probably aren't going to happen anytime soon, are a St. Patrick's Day dress, because I actually purchased a St. Patrick's Day print from Joann's, which reminded me a lot of printed dresses from the 1940s, but I'm currently filming this video one day before St. Patrick's Day, and I have not even started on that dress. So I think that's going to be something I hold off on until next year, which is kind of a shame, but sometimes that's what happens. And I'd also like to make a 1960s dress on my 1960s sewing machine, because I ended up buying a Singer zigzag from 1968 from an estate sale. I purchased it and a whole bunch of other stuff for $20, so it was definitely a good deal, and I got it cleaned up, and it is functional at the moment, though still not as clean as it probably should be. So I think that would be a fun thing to do, but that's definitely not high on my list of priority. Now, the two ideas that I think are most likely to happen is an 1890s ensemble, and I know that's a period that I keep coming back to. I do plan on branching out more this year, but I have a few ideas left for that period that I really want to accomplish first. And this one is inspired by a mink capelet that I saw in a fashion plate. And it's very much the shape you'd imagine 1890s cape to be, or capelet rather. It went down to about here and it had a high collar, but it wasn't made out of normal fur. It was made out of minks, like minks that still had little faces and paws intact. And I know that's quite disgusting, but I thought it was so interesting. Much like how hats used to have complete birds on them, there was just something about this that really struck me as being unusual and shocking and odd, but also very elegant. So I don't support the modern fur industry, but I knew an antique store near me often had these pelts come in that were from the 1950s or 60s. So at that point, when you're buying them vintage from an antique store, they're not really supporting the fur industry and they're not really popularizing the killing of animals. So I feel comfortable buying them from there. And I ended up purchasing probably 8 of these mink pelts. I'm planning on doing something out of those and having it form the collar of a jacket, which is worn over top of the skirt, and a relatively simple blouse. I had the skirt and blouse fabric in my stash, but I ended up purchasing some fabric for the coat and for the vest, and that's really high on my list of priorities. That's something that I want to get done before it gets too warm for me to continue with something like that. So I'm really excited about that. I do have some references that I can show you, but I haven't nailed down a design for that just yet. And then I also really want to make a medieval project. It's just a simple kirtle that has a lot of beading on it around the neckline, and I actually want to film that project because though I will be self-drafting the pattern and I won't be filming the pattern drafting process, kirtles were a very simple garment to draft since they were often just made out of squares and triangles. So I have some reference materials that I can link in that video that can lead people to draft their own, and I think that would be a cool project to do and hopefully not too complicated. And again, the fabrics I have for that are very warm toned and very appropriate for this time of year. So that's something that I want to get done relatively quickly. So those are the 2 ideas kind of on the top of my list, but as always, there are tons of things I'm excited about and interested in. And as for actually filming ideas, I filmed a clothing haul today and I'm going to try and film a closet tour later this week. I'm also gearing up to film a sewing room tour. I'd really like to get that filmed before I go fabric shopping in April. So that gives me about a month to get this room in a state where I want to show it on camera. Before doing that, I actually want to hang some light fixtures. This room gets really, really dark at night. Right now I'm sitting in front of a window and it's delightfully bright in here, but there are no hanging lamps in here. So my table, which is in the center of the room, often gets really poor lighting. It can be hard to work in here at night or just on cloudy days. And it's also really hard to film at night because this room is so dim and the footage quality just tends to be very poor. So that works out that I'm probably going to switch over entirely to hanging lights and have one over my sewing machine and ironing board so I can free up some table space by getting rid of all of the table lamps that I have and hopefully just have a brighter room overall. I also really want to buy some figurines from How to Train Your Dragon and hang them from the light fixtures and ceiling. It looks like they're flying overhead. I saw the 3rd How to Train Your Dragon movie this month and I absolutely loved it, and since it's the last movie, it's kind of the last opportunity to buy anything related to that movie. So there are a few shirts I have my eye on, but I also want to buy some dragons from the series just to remember it by and to be reminded of every day. It's probably going to involve me crawling onto my table to try and hang these lamps and get cords leading all over the room and stuck to the ceiling, so I'll try and film that for a vlog because it's sure to be entertaining no matter whether it fails or succeeds. Other random videos I'm intending on doing is a flip through some vintage pattern catalogs. I purchased 2 Butterick pattern catalogs from the 1940s and they are so interesting and colorful and wonderful, and I really want to share them with you guys in great detail. So I'm planning on doing a video focusing on each one where I flip through them and talk about which designs are my favorite, and hopefully you will feel like you're flipping through it too because it really is just a complete and total joy. That's enough of me randomly talking at the camera, and now I'm going to take you around my room and show you everything I've been up to, and let's just get into it. This is the idea for the Eton jacket and the skirt, which I've shown many times before. Over here I have all of the fabrics for it. So I have a whole bunch of this material. I think I originally purchased 6 yards, and I'm probably only going to use 2 yards for the top and the sleeves. But I don't think I'm going to have enough left to do this blouse, so I'm hoping to make it out of black velvet instead, since I have so much black velvet in the basement. I have a giant container of it, in fact. And I purchased a whole bunch of velvet ribbon, like 40 yards of velvet ribbon, to do the detail work on this across the skirt as well as the back of the jacket. This is what the back of the jacket looks like. This last little V shape was actually just made out of a scrap, and I wasn't originally intending on adding it there, but then I thought it looked really nice and added something kind of special. So that was just sewn on and pinned in place by eye. In fact, all of this was sewn on and pinned in place by eye because I couldn't quite get the shapes I wanted drawn out of my pattern, so I just played with it after I'd actually constructed it. The collar for this was pad stitched, but it looks a little bit wrinkly because I ended up making it too large. So I had to gather the edge to get it fit on there, and now there's some puckering there, but since the fabric is very dark, you can't really tell. So this was faced with material that matches the outer portion of the jacket, but then I actually ended up adding this little inset piece out of the velvet to kind of mimic the materials that I'm planning on using on the skirt. And then I've just carried those velvet bands from the back of the jacket around to the front, and they need to be sewn on. You're not really going to see them up by the shoulder because of how this flares out. So I'm really excited to see how that turns out. It's not quite like I envisioned it so far, but I do think I'm going to end up liking the finished result. Over here I have the mock-up I cut out for the 1970s project, and then up here I have all of the extra bits and pieces for the riding costume. So the blue silk chiffon that's on top is what I'm going to use to make a veil, as well as a tie that will go around the neck of the chemise set. And this is how that project is coming along. So the jacket is now completely finished. I went ahead and bound the buttonholes, and I also got the buttons sewn on. The sleeves are completely done and they've been added, and then everything has been lined with a silk taffeta. I also made this chemisette, and the collar of it is very, very high and backed with buckram, so it's incredibly stiff. Down the front I did a little bit of stitch work, and then there are some decorative buttons sewn onto lace on the sides. And overall this was made out of a cotton voile, which I picked up from Fabric Mart when I visited the store last year, but I mainly used lace trims that I purchased from Lace Place in Lancaster. And then the buttons were from my great aunt. Both sets of buttons were, in fact. Then underneath this there is a pretty poorly made bodice which supports the skirt. So the skirt has probably been the most tricky part of this project, even though it's the part I'm most familiar with, because 1830s riding skirts and riding skirts just in general are kind of a mystery. They often had very, very long hems, so they could drape over the legs when riding side saddle and they wouldn't be too revealing. But each fashion plate makes them look completely different, so it's been quite a task figuring out how to cut this and also how to hem this. But hopefully I will have that done soon, and then I can get some photos of this worn. I also just picked up the necessary accessories for this today. So I found some vintage leather gloves that fit me that I can wear with this. I also purchased a beaver felt Victorian top hat. So this is from the 1880s, which I'm going to pair with this project. And then I bought some shoes from American Duchess to go with this as well. And I'm planning on doing a video about it, a get ready with me for that project, because I've really put a lot of effort into it and I think it shows. And I'm hoping that I will find a place with horses where I can photograph it and actually get some photos of how it looks when riding a horse. Though I probably won't be riding side saddle, since I don't think they will let me do that, especially since I don't know how to actually ride a horse. But that'll be interesting. I'll try and film it because it might be interesting for you too. So this is the box devoted to the Vivian Deer project. This is actually my first and very failed attempt. I will show you where my second much improved attempt is. It's over here along with the rest of the project. So the skirt and pants were done a while ago, and I don't remember what video those were featured in or if I have never posted it, but they've been finished for a long while. The jacket, however, I just got the mock-up made for and cut out and pad stitched and everything in the past couple of days. I did a fitting with this and it fits really, really nicely. I'm not thrilled with how the lining of the lapels looks. I think it's a little bit messy, but since it is supposed to be a kind of unimportant military personnel uniform, I think it not being perfect isn't necessarily inaccurate historically, but we'll see how I feel when it's actually finished. This needs to be hemmed and lined and padded, and then I need to add closures and buttons, but it's well on its way to being done. Also, I will be using vintage Westbury buttons for this. I think I have enough in there. This is the 1820s project, which I have not touched since I last mentioned it. And here I have the project with the mink. So if you don't want to see these, then I'll put a timestamp on screen that you can skip to. This is the rough idea that I made for it before I actually had the fabric for it. So there's going to be a coat, and then the minks will go over top of the lapel and kind of hang down the center. So this is the fabric that I purchased. It's a camel, relatively thick wool. It's actually quite similar in weight to the fabric I'm using for the riding costume. So it's relatively thick, but it's also almost translucent because it's a relatively loose weave. So I think it'll be really easy to work with, and it complements both the reddish tones in these and the blonde and brown tones in this really, really nicely. So I think it was an excellent choice, and I'm really happy with how that looks. I'm planning on using this fabric to make a vest. So again, this has the blondish camely tone in it, but also has some darker browns, some more orangier tones, and overall red/burgundy base. So again, it looks really nice with this color, it looks really nice with the suiting, and it looks really nice with these more red toned ones. So I think I'm going to use that as lining for the front of the jacket, as well as a vest to go underneath it. And this is what I want to use for the skirt. So this is a large print striped silk taffeta. I'm hoping that I have enough of this left for this project. This was originally purchased for an 18th century project that I made for McCall's, but I had quite a bit of it left. So if I could use that for this project, that would be fantastic. So this is everything for the medieval project. I have a rough draft for the bodice, which I have to make a mock-up of and make alterations of, and also get the sleeves sorted out. But this is the fabric, so it's a chocolate brown, very loosely woven jacquard, and then it's got metallic threads in it and also blue threads in it. So I think this trim looks really, really nice with it. I got this from an estate, and then I went to Michael's and I purchased a whole bunch of beads to go with it as well. So all of these strand beads were like 70% off, and they match the various tones in the fabric. And then I also have these really cool gold leaves. I have several packages of these that I would like to use around the neckline. So I'm going to end up returning some of the beads because I don't need all of these, but I'm really excited about this project and the idea of having something that requires beading because I haven't done that in a long time. And then this the Elizabethan project, which still has not got very much attention. Over here, I have all of the $15 rewards for patrons. As I said, I do have them addressed and ready to go. I just need the prints to put in them. And then in here, I have my $36 Patreon rewards, which are little sunflowers. So I made ones based off of the first sunflower dress I made, as well as ones that I made off of the remake. So you're getting 2 sunflowers each if you're part of that tier. Also, this is the 1970s bonus project that you guys will be voting on which variation you would like to see. As I said, I haven't figured out fabrics for this just yet, so once I have those planned out, I will let you know, and I will put the poll up and have that be available. I also feel like it has kind of become tradition for me to show you what fabrics I'm tempted about. I've been trying not to buy as much in March, and I've been somewhat successful with it, so I don't think I'm going to make this order, but Fabric Mart has this amazing pumpkin wool imported from Scotland, and I want all of it. It's like a very thick wool, and I think it would be perfect for some sort of outerwear from the 18th century. I've been watching Poldark again, and it's made me want to make all of the 18th century woolly separates because that show has such great costuming when it comes to lower class pieces. They also have a white cotton gauze, which would be perfect for a variety of historical things, and this really cool glazed linen that's like black and red, and I love it and I want it, but I'm trying very, very hard not to buy it. Also, I mentioned this in my last video, but this is the 1960s remake, so I ended up making the jumper version of the pattern instead out of this really lovely kind of faux wool flannel, and then the cherry printed fabric that I purchased in Lancaster and regretted purchasing in Lancaster, so I'm happy to see it have some sort of use. I'm very pleased with how this dress turned out, and I'm so glad that I decided to remake it because I really feel like I've made 2 pieces that I'm going to get a lot of wear out of as opposed to one that I was probably just going to end up throwing out. And then just before I go, this is one of the Butterick pattern catalogs I purchased. So they've got such bright imagery in them, and they're really just stunning to look through. So this one is for December, but I have one from August as well. So I definitely want to make a video going through these in more detail. And then this is where I've been keeping the magazines that were sent to me. So they're in phenomenal condition, and there are several dozen of them, and they span through the mid to late 1860s. And there are quite a few books that are back to back. So you get one from April, and then one from May, and one from June, and you can really see how fashion changed on a month-by-month basis. And it's really inspired me to look back into this era again and consider making some more detailed dresses with some more ambitious and challenging techniques. So I'm going to take a good look through all of these before I do any additional fabric shopping and hopefully pick out some stuff to recreate these. I'd love to have you guys vote on what I recreate from this as well. So yeah, I just want to show you that briefly. And now my camera battery is flashing at me quite aggressively, so I think I'm gonna go. But I really hope you enjoyed this little peek into what I've been up to and what I plan on being up to. I'd love to know what projects you have in mind for your weeks and months ahead, and I will talk to all of you guys very soon.